Welcome to Section 3, Identity and Access Management, an overview. Let's take a look at what we'll learn. We're going to take a look at IAM, the concepts relating to identity, and the concepts relating to access management. Google Cloud Platform offers Cloud IAM, which lets you manage access control by defining who has access to which resources in your project. With Cloud IAM, you can grant granular access to specified GCP resources and prevent unwanted access to other resources. Cloud IAM lets you adopt the security principle of least privilege, so you grant only the necessary access to your resources. In Cloud IAM, you grant access to members. Members can be any of the following types: a Google account, a service account, a Google group, a G Suite domain, cloud identity domain, and we'll discuss all of these types a little more in detail in the following slides. A Google account represents a developer, an administrator, or any other person who interacts with GCP. Any email address that is associated with a Google account can be an identity, including gmail.com or other domains. A new user can sign up for a Google account by going to the Google Account Sign Up page. A service account is an account that belongs to your application instead of an individual end user. When you run code that is hosted on GCP, you specify the account that the code should run as. You can create as many service accounts as needed to represent the different logical components of your application. For more information about using service accounts in your application, please make sure you check out this link. A Google group is a named collection of Google accounts and service accounts. Every group has a unique email address that is associated with that group. You can find the email address that is associated with a group by clicking About on the homepage of any Google group. For more information about Google groups, please make sure to use the following link. Google Groups are a convenient way to apply an access policy to a collection of users. You can grant and change access controls for a whole group at once, instead of granting or changing access one at a time for an individual user or service account. You can also easily add members and remove members from a Google group, instead of updating a Cloud IAM policy or removing users. It's important to note that Google Groups don't have login credentials, and you cannot use Google Groups to establish identity or make a request to access a resource. A G Suite domain represents a virtual group of all the Google accounts that have been created in an organization's G Suite account. G Suite account domains represent your organization's internet domain name, such as example.com, and when you add a user to your G Suite domain, a new Google account is created for a user inside a virtual group, such as username@example.com. Like Google Groups, G Suite domains cannot be used to establish identity, but they have enabled convenient permission management. A cloud identity domain is like a G Suite domain because it represents a virtual group of Google accounts in an organization. However, Cloud Identity domain users don't have access to G Suite applications and features. For more information about this, please look at the following link. Let's take a look at some identifiers. The All Authenticated Users identifier is a special identifier that represents anyone who is authenticated with a Google account or service account. Users who are not authenticated, such as anonymous visitors, are not included. The All Users identifier is a special identifier that represents anyone on the internet, including authenticated and unauthenticated users. Note that some GCP APIs require authentication of any user accessing the service, and in those cases, all users will only imply authorization for all authorized users. So let's take a look at some concepts related to access management. When an authenticated member attempts to access a resource, Cloud IAM checks the resource's Cloud IAM policy to determine whether the action is allowed. Resources. You can grant access to users for a GCP resource. Some examples of resources are projects, compute engine instances, and storage cloud buckets. Some services such as Cloud PubSub and Compute Engine supports granting Cloud IAM permissions at a granularity finer than project level. For example, you can grant the PubSub subscriber role to a user for a particular PubSub topic, or you can grant a Compute Instance admin role to a user for a specific Compute Engine instance. In other cases, you can grant Cloud IAM permissions at a project level. The permissions are then inherited by all resources within the project. For example, to grant access to a storage bucket, you must grant the access to the project that contains the bucket. For more information about what roles can be granted on which resources, please refer to the following link. Permissions determine what operations are allowed on a resource. In the Cloud IAM world, permissions are reserved in the form of service, resource, verb. For example, PubSub subscriptions consume. Permissions are usually not always corresponding one-on-one with the REST methods. That is, each GCP service has an associated set of permissions for each REST method that is exposed. The caller of that method needs those permissions to call that method. For example, the caller of publisher.publish needs the PubSub topics publish permission. You don't assign permissions to users directly. Instead, you assign them to a role which contains one or more permissions. A role is a collection of permissions. You cannot assign a permission to a user directly. Instead, you grant them to a role. When you grant a role to a user, you grant them all the permission that that role contains. There are three kinds of roles in Cloud IAM: primitive roles, predefined roles, and custom roles. Primitive roles. These roles are historically available in the Google Cloud Platform console and will continue to work. These roles are owner, editor, and viewer. Predefined roles. These roles are the Cloud IAM roles that give finer-grained access control than the primitive roles. For example, the predefined role PubSub Publisher provides access to only published messages to a Cloud PubSub topic. Custom roles are roles that you create to tailor permissions to the needs of your organization when predefined roles don't meet your needs.